Okay, class, we just got through watching the YouTube video over the moon phases, and now I have already passed out your graphic organizers. If you refer to the second page, there is a list of vocabulary words. These are the vocabulary words here: orbit, phase, satellite, waxing, waning, solar, lunar, eclipse, gravity, and tide. So while I'm reading, I want you to take notes in your graphic organizers and also be aware to see if any of these words pop up in the reading that you could add their vocabulary definition to. Okay, so the book is The Moon Book by Gail Gibbons. As the sun sets at the end of each day, the sky becomes darker and darker. On many clear nights, our moon shines brightly in the night sky. There's the moon right here. Our moon is the brightest and biggest light in our night sky. It outshines all the stars and planets, which appear as small points of light. Some planets have many moons. Earth has one. A star burns gases that give off heat and light. The sun is a star. A planet reflects sunlight and revolves around the sun. The Earth is a planet. Our moon looks big and bright because it is so close to the Earth, compared to the faraway stars and planets. It is about 238,900 miles away. So here you can see they're looking at the moon. And then right here, it shows the distance between the Earth and the moon. The moon makes no light of its own to shine. It is bright in the night sky because it reflects the sun's light. It is about 1/4 the size of Earth. It is made up of rock and dust. There is no sign of life or air. It shows you here that the Earth is about 8,000 miles in diameter and about 25,000 miles around. The moon is about 2,000 miles in diameter and about 68,000 miles around. Most scientists and astronomers think that our moon formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Some believe something collided with Earth that tossed out a cloud of rock and debris. While orbiting around the Earth, the rock and debris came together to form the moon. Right here. Astronomers study the planets, their moons, and the stars. An orbit is a path of one object around another. So an orbit is the path of one object around another. In ancient times, people throughout the moon was a powerful god or goddess. The Romans called their moon goddess Diana. In Greece, the moon goddess was Selene, who rode through the sky in a river chariot. Some American Indian tribes thought the moon and sun were brother and sister gods. Stories and legends were told about the shapes and shadows that show on the moon's surface. Some people said the moon showed a man's face, the man in the moon, who was imprisoned there for stealing. Others told of moon demons living there. There you go. The moon is Earth's only natural satellite. It takes about 1 month for the moon to travel around the Earth. The moon makes one complete rotation for each complete trip around the Earth. Thus, the same side of the moon is always facing the Earth. So right here it says a satellite is an object orbiting around a larger one. And you can see here that the sunlight is coming onto the earth and it's shining light onto one side of it. And here you can see the opposite. The light is coming and here's the moon. So the moon is not showing a shadow. The moon appears to change shape, but it doesn't. The different shapes we see are called phases of the moon. We are seeing different amounts of lights being reflected on the moon. How much light we see depends on the positions of the earth, moon, and sun. So right here you can see, depending on the positions of the earth, moon, and sun, show what phases that we will see. The phases of the moon. The new moon. During the new moon, the moon is almost directly between the sun and the earth. The moon looks dark. We see no light reflected. So the moon will look like this right here. See no light coming from it. The moon is waxing when the lit surface we see is getting bigger. In a few days, a bit of the sunlight side of the moon shows. It forms a crescent. This is the crescent. You see just a small sliver of the moon showing. When the moon is a quarter of its way around the earth, it is in its first quarter phase. We see it as half lit. It is sometimes called a half moon. Right here is the half moon. When the moon is waxing between a first quarter moon and a full moon, it is called a gibbous moon. Right here is the gibbous moon. About 2 weeks have passed since the new moon. Now the entire face of the moon we see shines. And this is a full moon right here. See it totally lighted up. The moon is waning when the lit surface we see is getting smaller. When the moon is waning between a full moon and a last quarter moon, it is a gibbous moon once again. So it will look like this. Last quarter moon. When the moon is 3/4 of its way around the earth, it is in the last quarter phase. Again, we see it as half lit. It is sometimes called a half moon. So it will look like this. The other half will be lit up. A crescent moon, once again we see a small slither of moon shining in the sky. So it will be the other slither of moon. It takes the moon about 1 month to go through an entire set of phases. People used to know the time of the month by watching the moon's phases. So again, we will be back at the new moon. Do we have any questions over the phases of the moon? Okay. A solar eclipse is when the moon's orbit around the earth is usually tilted slightly compared to Earth's orbit around the sun. Because of this, the moon cannot exactly line up between the sun and Earth. But when the moon's orbit is not tilted and the moon lines up exactly between the sun and Earth, a solar eclipse happens. That is a solar eclipse right there. It says, a moon's shadow falls on Earth. A solar eclipse can last up to 7.5 minutes. Do not look directly at a solar eclipse. When the sun, Earth, and moon are exactly lined up, a lunar eclipse happens. As in a solar eclipse, the moon's orbit is not tilted. The Earth blocks off the sunlight that usually lights up the moon. The moon has a reddish glow. The lunar comes from the word luna, a Latin word for moon. A lunar eclipse can last up to 3½ hours. So here's the lunar eclipse right here. You can see the moon is a reddish color. The moon affects the oceans too. The moon's pull, called gravity, on the oceans is strong enough to cause tides. Tides are the daily rising and falling of the ocean waters. This is because the moon takes about 25 hours to come back to the same place in the sky it was the night before. Tides differences vary around the world. So here is the high tide, which happens about every 13 hours. And a low tide also happens every 13 hours. So the high tide, all the water will come into the shore. And the low tide, the water will leave the shore. Okay, and we're gonna stop right there. Are there any questions? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start the group projects. If y'all would get into your groups and get your markers and your manila papers, and we're gonna pass out paper plates, and we're gonna go ahead and start on the project. Thank you.